on this computer. I will forget. See now, this is where me not having a laptop is gonna come a cropper. Facebook.
Yeah, we need to get you a laptop.
Say again?
No, I said, yeah, we need to get you a laptop stat.
100% Matthew. Conversations. Presentation, common dream. All being well, my organizational skills, wonderful. My organizational skills come in handy here. Yes, Lord. Win it.
Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Yeah, see it there? Now, live on Facebook. I could just accept them into the waiting room. What do you think?
Yeah, perfect.
But then we're not live on Facebook.
That's okay. We'll give them a chance to see what's what before we kick off.
All right, calm. Ready?
Do you know them both?
No, I don't know any of them.
Super.
You happy to do your thing?
Yeah, man. I will try and steer something in some way.
All right, brother, all yours. They're coming in.
Hi, Philippa. Hi, Barbara.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, both. How are you?
Good. Yourselves?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Thanks for joining us this evening.
No problem. I'm quarantining at home, so I don't have a social life. So this is it.
No. Sorry to hear that.
That's okay.
This is
I'm
perfect.
fine. It's just procedure. So
I think, yeah, it seems like a lot of people around this time, especially, are kind of getting the ping or the text to say if they've been in contact. So
I've just traveled from South Africa, so I'm stuck.
oh right.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you currently in South Africa or you're in UK?
No, I'm in Slovenia at the moment.
Sure.
So I quarantine in my parents' house rather than in a hotel in London.
Sure.
Of course.
Better food and cheaper too.
I'll bet. Yeah. Well, how many days of quarantine have you got left?
8 days left, so it's 10 days altogether. But it's okay. I get to spend Christmas with my parents and with my sister, so that's good.
Yeah, brilliant.
How are you, Philippa?
Okay.
Good to have you on.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, just to kind of give a bit of context to this session, what we started back in 2020, just around the time of the just after the George Floyd murder. We wanted to start just a Zoom kind of series exploring different areas. So we've more of an informal chat for people to talk, discuss, listen, share thoughts. And we've covered different topics like race, motherhood, all sorts. And I think for us, we felt it would be a really kind of poignant time to focus on refugees. And we know in Nottingham and much wider, of course, lots of people do different things. And it just wanted to kind of collect as many people and put it out to everybody who wants to join, who's got a heart for supporting refugees and working with refugees as well. So yeah, I think what we will do, we'll give it another maybe 1 or 2 minutes, see if anybody else joins us, and then kick off with just maybe a short intro of yourself, what you do. And also, I think if Philip is able to return after them, we'll get her to do a short intro, and then yeah, just have a few kind of discussion points. And as we say, it's a really kind of informal chance to just kind of share any thoughts or opinions that you've got, and hopefully just a learning point. So we're recording it as well, just for other people who may at some point who are interested in the topic, want to connect and maybe take away something from it. So yeah.
Alex, whilst I'm changing screens, can you be so kind to make sure I'm on the correct screen, please? Because I've got two screens up. So if I
Yeah.
is that all okay? Can you still can see, right?
I can still see.
Wonderful, good news.
Tech is all working smoothly for once.
Okay.
All good?
Yeah, bro. Yeah. I'm just making sure I can change on screens all okay. Yeah, on you, man.
Super. So just to start, and hopefully Philip can join us in a bit, but Philip, Barbara, sorry, do you want to just give a short intro to yourself and what you do day to day?
Okay. I'm Barbara. I'm the volunteer manager at Nottingham and Nottinghamshire Refugee Forum. We are a local charity here in Nottingham, and we've been working with refugees and asylum seekers since 2000. Our kind of, I guess, main point of main work lies around ensuring that asylum seekers and refugees feel welcome in Nottingham, that we connect them to all the different services. We try to problem solve some of the straightforward issues that they face. And yeah, so we're primarily like an advice and support center, but we also offer opportunities for volunteering, opportunities to learn English. We have an interpreting service in-house. Yeah, but mainly, yeah, we try to be there for those who have come to Nottingham, whether they wanted to come here or not. And yeah, extend friendship and support to those in need.
Brilliant. Just a quick question on that. How has it been during this kind of very interesting period during the pandemic of, well, for one, first that the lockdown, and how you guys were able to navigate that and maybe coming to know?
It was kind of both good and bad. Bad in the sense that obviously we had to really quickly redo all the services, really think fast how we can continue to provide service, but on a, in a remote way. So back in March 2020, we literally had like 3 days where we kind of closed the space for our clients, and we just took the time to organize ourselves and organize the new processes to be able to continue offering services via telephone, via Zoom. So we have been consistently providing services. Just for example, what used to be a drop-in service is now a phone-in service. So there might be some additional steps that we've introduced, and got kind of, changed some of the volunteering roles. Some of the staff changed a little bit how they do their things, but ultimately we have survived. I mean, at the beginning it was a bit strange I think for a lot of our service users who were used to kind of walking into the building and seeing people face to face. But quite early on, we got to pretty much the same levels of busyness as we've seen prior to the pandemic. And for the past few months, we've also kind of reintroduced some of the face-to-face services. So we now run kind of a hybrid way of working. So there's chances to do both. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but at the same time, a learning curve. And we've found out that we can do a lot of things differently, or that we can find new ways of delivering a service that benefit our service users, as well as make some of the things for our staff and volunteers a bit easier. So that's why we're taking some of those lessons that we've learned in the past couple of years, and we're sticking with it. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's brilliant. I can imagine it's at the start, it's never easy to change in such a sharp manner. You have to kind of navigate very quickly, but it sounds like you guys did that in a very kind of collective and collaborative way. So it's
Yeah.
testament
I mean,
to
we literally had the entire staff team and a few volunteers together, and kind of just throwing in ideas and deciding together how we want to run things. It was really like a moment of togetherness. And I think just because the entire world was in the same in the same situation, it was easier to convince perhaps those who were a bit reluctant or who kind of didn't quite imagine what things would look like to get on board and really try things out. And of course, it wasn't whatever we decided on the 20th of March that we did exactly the same throughout the pandemic. There was a lot of changes, a lot of adaptations to just try to always make things better or easier for our service users as well as for our staff and volunteers. So, but kind of that agility and adaptability is something, again, that we all learned and we want to keep with us as we go forward.
Of course, yeah. No, that's really good. I know, because it's something that has to be made so hastily that I guess often you probably find a lot of organizations would just make the decision kind of top down. But hearing that you guys obviously came together to make that, it's really good, and obviously it's paid a lot of dividends. Brilliant. I think Philip may still be away at the moment. So Jerome, I think, did you have some discussion points that you wanted to put forward?
No discussion points. I think to give a little bit of context to, I guess, how and why we do these monthly conversations. So, especially this one, specifically refugees. So, for yourself, Barbara, and anybody else that's watching, that we're based in Nottingham, and in an area called Sneinton, there's a block of flats, and I've forgotten the name. And it's a really tall high-rise, and I think it's largely populated by people that are seeking asylum and refugees. And from just local connections, I met with an organisation called Care for Calais, along with Trinity Church, and along with a few other organisations, which went to these block of flats in order to hand out some products, some clothing products and some gifts for their children in the run up to Christmas. And that combined within the exact same 48 hours with the spike in deaths of refugees kind of really sparked another kind of conversation to say, all right, not necessarily because it's such a big task to address, how can we change things, but at least being able to have a conversation around people's thoughts about refugees. And you yourself, Barbara, are doing some fantastic work in that realm, and obviously what we aim to do in kind of building a network, a loving network, especially around people that are isolated. We could envision that refugees are possibly the most isolated communities currently there. One comment, and probably mentioning it a little bit too early, but just to kind of give a little bit of context to this, when sharing this moment, a gentleman responded and said, no, we shouldn't have any more refugees. I could read it verbatim, like, we shouldn't have any more refugees. This country's filled already. And I did obviously naturally say, hey, look, like, please come along to tonight. It will be fantastic to have you. Just to hear, I guess, opposing thoughts and kind of hear how these sounds echo out. And this is kind of the heart of conversations, not for obviously to progress toward positivity from either side, but for us to understand and to have these conversations. So yeah, that's kind of giving context as to how and why we are here tonight.
Yeah, and like you said, there are a lot of misconceptions out there. And, you know, when I train our volunteers, and bear in mind, people who normally want to volunteer with us have an interest and have a positive attitude towards refugees and asylum seekers. But, you know, the information that is available out there, or that is kind of in your face, might not necessarily be accurate. So when I train our volunteers, I usually give them like a short pop quiz with some statistics. So we ask them, you know, what do you think, what percentage of UK population are refugees and asylum seekers? And we have people who go like 10%, 20%. And because the media is trying to tell you that we're overflown with refugees and asylum seekers, that all of them are coming here. But compared to other countries in Europe, even, I think the UK is 17th in Europe in asylum applications per capita. So that's, you know, when you compare the number of asylum applications with the general population, we're 17th in that ratio, which means that other countries in Europe that are much smaller will get, you know, proportionally much higher volume of applications. So we're not overflown with refugees and asylum seekers. I don't think we have too many. The UK is one of the richest nations in the world, and I think we can do better than what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. It is interesting to see the responsibility of the media, and I'm sure we could talk about so many tangents on that topic alone, but specifically within refugees, to see even different photos, and even within myself, to see how an opinion can sway based on tone and narrative, and especially with individuals that you don't engage with. So, for instance, the race issue is an issue, but generally speaking, people of different races engage with one another because there's not a barrier of different languages. And then there's a further barrier between natives, I guess, natives and people that aren't native to the country. They have no ability to engage in dialogue, say, hey, how are you? What's happening? What are you about? What am I about? Nice to meet you. So I think that is possibly what continues to further that gap and feed into a negative misconception that we are all human and that we all share, I guess, the same desires, and we can't see what a lot of people are actually, their circumstances were before coming to a different situation.
Absolutely. I always advocate for direct contact. I think, you know, somebody who has negative views about asylum seekers or refugees, if they were in the same room in a conversation with somebody who has been through fleeing persecution, fleeing violence, having to cross, you know, half of the world to seek safety, and just even, you know, have a conversation with them as a human being, not even necessarily talking about the reasons why and you know, how they got here, but just engage in a conversation like, you know, human to human. They will see them in a different light, and it's very difficult to be hostile and antagonistic if you're sitting across the table from somebody and getting to know them and seeing them as a person.
Sorry, Alex, I know you want to say something, but we've just had a question come in from Facebook here. Barbara Philippa, I'm not sure if you guys know the statistic. We've been asked, what is the statistic of asylum seekers in the country at the moment, if that's statistics ready to hand?
So the government publishes statistics quarterly. So if you go to the government website and probably put in something like asylum statistics or something, so there is literally information on how many asylum applications were lodged each year, how many were positive resolved, how many were negatively resolved, how many are still in the process of decision making. There's a breakdown of countries where most asylum seekers come from. So all these stats are actually available, publicly available to everyone on the government website. I can try to Google the actual website and put it in chat if that helps.
So yeah, what I pulled out very quickly, and this was from the UNHCR website, so I would hope they're accurate, but it said in the year ending September 2021, the UK received 37,562 asylum applications. I think in context, like in the year ending June 2021, it says Germany received the highest number of applicants.
Right. How many did you say?
So that's 37,562. I will look to try and double check that on the government website as well.
Okay.
It's possible. I'm just going through.
The UK population is currently 67 million. Ooh.
There you go. You can do the math then. How much percent, how many percent of population are asylum seekers?
Whoa. You said 37,500, Alex.
Yeah, 37,562.
Wow. So we're looking at 0.0005.
Yeah, and well, so in the year ending June 2021, Germany received 113,625, followed by France with 87,180, and Spain 67,000.
Yeah. I popped in the chat. I hope this is the correct one. It does say it was published on the 25th of November. The quarterly statistics. How many people do we grant asylum or protection to? So it will have. So for example, it says in the year ending September 2021, the UK offered protection in the form of asylum, humanitarian protection, or alternative forms of leave and resettlement to 13,210 people. And additionally, oh, sorry. Yep.
No. It's interesting. Can you break down, because some of what does accepted asylum means you can stay within the UK within a particular time. What does the process look like for somebody to first of all arrive into the country? First of all, to arrive into the country, and I'm assuming there is a process to where they're saying, "Hey, I'm seeking asylum." So excuse naive, but I'm assuming they can't just book a flight to the UK, arrive into Heathrow, and then say, "Hey, my name's Jerome. I'm seeking asylum from X. Can I stay?" Like, generally speaking, what's the general process for someone to seek asylum into the UK?
I guess first thing that is important to note is that it's not possible to seek asylum in the UK from outside of the UK. So you have to make it into the UK and apply for asylum when you're in the country.
Sure.
Now, for some individuals, it can happen that they literally fly into Heathrow, and at Heathrow, when they go through immigration, they say, "Hello, my name is Jerome and I want to apply for asylum." But a lot of people make it into the country one way or another. And then whilst they're already in the UK, they eventually travel to Home Office in Croydon, and then they make themselves known and apply for asylum there. So once they apply for asylum, they have a very short interview with a Home Office official where they have to explain who they are, why they got here, why they needed to flee their home country, and how they got there. Their kind of biometrics are taken, and they can also apply for asylum support, because asylum seekers do not have the right to work, they do not have the right to rent. So for the vast majority of them, they would need to opt into the government support. So that government support comes in the form of, so initially they would be put into kind of temporary accommodation where they receive full board. So there will be like in a hotel or hostel type of accommodation with 3 meals a day until they are dispersed somewhere in the UK. So they will be basically sent to live in a city or town, either in the Midlands or the North or in Glasgow. And then that's kind of where they will be living in an asylum accommodation, usually a shared house with other asylum seekers. And they must reside there until the Home Office makes a decision on their case, which could take years. So when they're in the system, they receive, I think at the moment it's £39.63 per week to live on. That's for food, toiletries, travel, phone, for personal needs, basically. And that's it, and they're stuck and they wait. And in terms of kind of different milestones along the process, one of the things that is required of all asylum seekers is that they regularly report to the authorities to kind of touch base and say, "I'm still here, I'm still complying with your rules." Because technically, asylum, so being in the asylum process means they have they technically receive immigration bail. So they are temporarily permitted to reside in the UK until the application is resolved, but it comes with conditions. So reporting is one of those conditions. And staying and that specific address is another condition of their immigration bail.
So when you mean resolved, how will it be resolved?
So it means that, so I guess that the biggest part of the whole asylum process is the asylum seeker having their long substantive interview or asylum interview. So it's an opportunity for them to present their story and any evidence they have to support their testimony to the Home Office. So it's an interview that is normally recorded that takes sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6 hours even. They are sometimes asked hundreds of questions because the Home Office, first of all, wants to establish that they are who they say they are, that they come from the country where they say they're coming from. And then obviously they will go deep into their life story from different angles, trying to evaluate whether they're telling the truth and whether there is a real fear of persecution, well-founded fear of persecution. Yeah, and after that, the Home Office then makes a decision whether the individual fits the criteria for a refugee, and gives them a written response of their decision. And then the next steps are depending on whether it's a positive or a negative decision.
Sure.
Yeah. So a positive decision would normally mean that they would be granted refugee status, which then allows them to stay in the country. So initially refugee status is for 5 years. And after that, they can apply for indefinite leave to remain. And the next step for some is then applying for citizenship if they want to or if they can.
Sure thing, sure thing. Again, so you've got another kind of input from a comment. So I think a massive problem is the process that they're unable to work or even apply to work in the meantime. There is a group of people that could be an asset to their community. So yeah, unfortunately, again, it would be good to kind of hear your thoughts on how are encouraged our refugees about wanting to be a part of their community and not just, I guess, in a moment of constant process and kind of waiting for the status to be approved. Is that something that happens well within Refugee Forum?
Yeah, I mean, most of our service users would love to work if they were allowed to, but at the moment it's prohibited. So asylum seekers are not allowed to work. Theoretically, after a year, so if the Home Office hasn't made the decision on their case within a year, they can apply for work permit, but they could only work in professions that are on the shortage occupation list. So if they're like a prima ballerina or an astrophysicist or something very out there, then they might have a chance of actually working. But you know, for an average person, it doesn't work out. So it's something that is there on paper, but in practice it doesn't really help. There's been campaigns to lift the ban. I don't know if you've heard of the Lift the Ban campaign. National campaign basically trying to pressure the government to lift the ban on asylum seekers working, so give them the opportunity to support themselves, because a lot of them do want to work and are capable and willing to work. And the government has promised to make a review and to look at, you know, different aspects of it. And I think it was just last week or maybe a couple of weeks ago when they've just decided to not go with it, and the ban stays in effect basically. So yeah, we're where we are, unfortunately.
Just one with the current status of obviously them not being able to work. Do you feel, and I guess this ties into another question, which I'll get to, but do you feel that that kind of adds onto the rhetoric that some people may hear or feel about refugees, in that sense of being in the community? Other people may feel, oh, these people aren't contributing, they're only receiving. And with that being said, obviously not having that contact to kind of discuss with them, know again what refugees or what those seeking asylum can or cannot do. Do you feel that it kind of contributes to that negative perception of what people may feel, oh, these people are just draining or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is definitely that an average person doesn't necessarily understand how the asylum system works and what the asylum seekers can or cannot do, or are allowed or not allowed to do. So in that sense, it can seem that, you know, if you have, let's say 37,000 people who have to rely on the government and can't support themselves. Yes, some people might think, okay, this is a drain on, I don't know, a huge burden on the economy somehow. But then at the same time, the government also doesn't even consider the option of allowing asylum seekers to work. So it's, and as I said, they definitely do contribute. So even if they cannot work, a lot of asylum seekers volunteer within their communities, within the public sector, wherever they can, basically, because, as I said, most of the people that we work with, they don't want to sit idle and be reliant on the government, because most of them used to work in their past lives before they came to the UK. I mean, we see doctors, nurses, mechanics, barbers, from all walks of life, and they all want to, you know, continue doing what they love doing, what they used to be able to do. But now kind of coming here, being prevented from working or not being able to retain or develop their skills, what happens is really the opposite. Sometimes they lose motivation, they lose their skills. And if you're stuck in the system, let's say for 2, 3, 4 years, when you come out of it, you kind of almost have to start from scratch. So a lot of people would kind of have to take a long time to get back to a point where they'll be able to join in the workforce and then kind of restart their career. So from my kind of selfish perspective as a volunteer manager, I always love to get, you know, service users who are not able to work but have a lot of free time and the skills they bring. I'm just going, yes, come, you know, you can still do something. We might not be able to, you know, we can't pay you, we can't employ you, but we can keep you busy, we can give you meaningful things to do. You can help others from your community. And for a lot of them, this is really like a lifeline. We have, you know, some volunteers who have been stuck in the system for probably about 4 or 5 years now. But all along they've been volunteering, sometimes in multiple roles, and sometimes we see them maybe 2-3 days a week. They really give their all, not because, you know, it's the only thing that they can do, but they really enjoy it and they feel like it helps them to help others. So yeah, I support that.
Yeah, with the small, as the small network that we have, we support that too, and yeah, we will definitely be in touch about the ways in which we can figure out the way in which we can take galvanize, don't they? But mobilize the positive energy of people that are potentially lose motivation, especially if there's a large amount of patience that is required in order to understand and engage with people that have different language barrier and different cultures. That's a whole different conversation. Different cultures. So yeah, that is yeah, really, really, really good, and I think it's the only thing to which we can begin to develop toward, of which is saying, hey, let's figure out what you can develop and you can bring to a community, and that's the end of that. But yeah, so great work.
I just, wanted to quickly touch on this thing. I guess it's because we're living in such a very odd time. In your opinion, do you feel like the rhetoric around asylum seekers and refugees has been impacted during this period of like COVID, or has it changed in any way significantly, positively or negatively, or perhaps neither.
I don't know. I thought there was much more kind of open solidarity during COVID. Perhaps people forgot a little bit about, who you are, where you come from, what's your immigration status, and they just really helped out their neighbors and people in their community. So I'll be optimistic and I'll say it's been better. But then I also know you kind of mingle with people who probably have similar kinds of opinions. So I'm not really necessarily exposed to that many people who will have really negative views about refugees and asylum seekers. So in that sense, I'm biased. So I don't know, what others are talking about. So the people that I surround myself with are probably on the same page, and they will be supportive and will be compassionate and will show solidarity.
Of course, yeah.
But perhaps kind of linked to it, not so much COVID, but some of the events that have happened in the last, not even year, last 6 months or so. So we've seen an outpour of kind of support and solidarity and engagement after the Taliban took over Afghanistan and Kabul. So that prompted a spike in people trying to offer donations, trying to get into volunteering and just really helping out. So that was like a driving force behind people showing care and kind of trying to get in touch, trying to help, as well as recently with the unfortunate deaths of how many was it, 27 asylum seekers who tried to cross the channel on a boat. And that again was a tragedy that prompted a lot of people to try to do something and show the support, show solidarity.
Of course, yeah. And with that, obviously, with the outpouring of people looking to, donate or what have you, do you feel, is there, I guess, outside of donating money to charities that kind of support refugees in that way, are there any kind of other practical ways that people can get involved?
I think different charities will probably have different ways, or they will accept different ways of help. For us specifically at Refugee Forum, so if I can do a shameless plug, we do have a Christmas appeal out. So for those who do consider financial support, we have a Christmas appeal trying to raise funds specifically for our anti-destitution project. It's a service that's been running for, I think, over 10 years now, if not more. And it's aimed specifically at destitute refused asylum seekers. So those who, have been through that difficult process, but somehow did not manage to convince the Home Office that they fit the criteria, or they didn't manage to convince the Home Office that the fear of persecution back home is real. So I could do a whole rant and a whole 2-hour presentation of why this happens. But the point is that some people fall through the cracks, and what happens then is that they are without any form of support from the government, effectively no money and no place to stay. So we try to offer practical support with a monthly small cash grant and with weekly food and toiletries. And so our current Christmas appeal is just to try to raise additional funds so we can continue providing that kind of cash support and the supplies that we try to offer as kind of a practical way of supporting those who really have nothing at that point. So that's one way people can kind of financially contribute to our efforts. We do have, we've had some individual donors who would kind of do collections of food items that we normally give out on a regular basis. Just bearing in mind that sometimes people think, oh, I'm just going to empty my pantry and give all the expired food because somebody can eat it. That's not the best way of kind of showing appreciation, because that just gives extra work to our volunteers trying to sort through things that are appropriate and kind of still within date, but like we did have quite a lot of excellent donors. This is like community groups even, and some individuals who have regularly been donating kind of appropriate food that we can then give out to our service users. So that was one way of people getting involved in a kind of practical way. Recently also we've had some offers of I think there's a whole community in Gedling who have prepared gift bags for the children of the families that we work with. So just to make their Christmas a bit more special. So again, a lady organized her entire community and bringing, I think we have something like 180 bags for children for Christmas. So again, it was a special way of helping out, contributing to our cause. Volunteering, so donating time and effort, that's another way of getting involved, doing something without having to spend a penny. So for those who are interested in volunteering in one way or another, they can get in touch with me. What else? Sometimes it's kind of odd things that people offer. We sometimes get, I don't know, a donation of a bicycle, which is always very welcome, because it's a free way for our service users to get around town faster. Or yeah, and then sometimes we get offers that we can't accept, but we can then direct those individuals to perhaps other charities or partner organizations that might be able to process a donation. So for example, when it comes to donations of clothes and shoes, we work with a partner organization called Host Nottingham. They're actually running a clothes bank from our premises, and they've been inundated with bags and bags of clothes that they're kind of trying to sort through. And again, they've been vital throughout the pandemic. They've been delivering bags of clothes to asylum seekers and refugees out there in the community. I'm not sure if they are taking donations at the moment, but if you follow their website, hostnottingham.org.uk, I think, it will be out there if they're taking donations, what kind of donations they're taking, and how to get in touch with them to organize a drop-off. So that's one way, again, of not having to do everything, because we're not going to pretend we're the only organization working with refugees and asylum seekers in Nottingham. Obviously, we do work in partnerships, and only by all of us working together, we're able to provide that kind of holistic support to our clients.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah, that provides really good context, really good context, Barbara. I think you have enlightened quite a few viewers as to the context behind refugees. And I think if only that, it's changing perspective and understanding and changing the way in which things are perceived, and that will continue to knock on effects to many other people. So yeah, really appreciated, and yeah, I think it's been very valuable just in the information that you've shared. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. You press the button and just keep on talking. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to be contacted, really, because I know, as I said, a lot of people don't necessarily have an idea of what it means to seek asylum, what they're going through, what they can and cannot do. So one thing we will also try to offer, we have done this in the past, particularly pre-pandemic times, where we could actually sit together and do things practically and have those conversations face to face. We haven't been able to do this in a while, but hopefully in the new year, we'll organize a few more kind of open evenings or open days at Refugee Forum, perhaps at first on Zoom, but hopefully eventually also in person, where, you know, any member of the public, any local resident in Nottingham could come and visit and just kind of hear firsthand narrative of what it means to claim asylum, what it means to flee the horrible things that some of our service users have, and then also understand how the system works and where we fit in as a charity, what we can achieve, and at what point we are also kind of powerless, because the ultimate decisions are still made by the Home Office, and it still depends on kind of in which direction the government wants to go, and that then dictates what we are able to do, and it doesn't look too good these days.
Yeah, of course.
No, I think that provides a great context and starting place for a lot of people, as you said, you know, those conversations and insight, which obviously we all come from a place of, we've got our kind of lives, and it's just, yeah, taking that time to step away and kind of look through the lens of someone else and hear somebody else's perspective to understand and put yourself in somebody else's shoes to then gain the information, knowledge, and then hopefully move to support and help in some way, or even if just change perspective and narrative.
Yeah, I hope so.
I've got one more question coming, and then Alex, I'll leave it for you to wind down if you're happy. Are volunteers legally allowed to register as volunteers for charities?
Do you mean if the asylum seekers are allowed to register as volunteers?
Yeah, I presume so. Yeah, are asylum seekers legally allowed to register as yeah.
Asylum seekers are allowed to volunteer. The important thing to note there, so volunteering in itself is what I say, like a contentious word in some sense. So volunteering has to be voluntary, and it shouldn't come with any form of contract or obligations on the volunteers that they have to be there, or they have to, I don't know, you know, volunteer for 6 months for, I don't know, 40 hours a week. As long as it's voluntary and the individual has the opportunity to be flexible around it and to kind of step away from it at any given time, that would then be volunteering, rather than, for example, voluntary work when somebody decides or is forced to work for free somewhere under a form of contract. So we do not support that, and that's something that can actually get asylum seekers in trouble. But if it's just a regular volunteering, again, voluntary commitment to, I don't know, a few hours each week in a specific role without strings attached, in the sense that there will be kind of negative implications if they don't show up for a shift, that's absolutely permitted. And the Home Office is also quite clear that this is permitted to all asylum seekers, including those who have had their cases refused, so who are destitute, refused asylum seekers, still kind of fighting for the right to stay in the UK. They're also allowed to volunteer, because volunteering is something that kind of, you can't really prevent a person from voluntarily giving up their time and energy to help a local cause. So yeah, volunteering within the charities and within the public sector, I believe, is allowed for asylum seekers. And I do know quite a few organizations are reluctant to take on asylum seekers as volunteers, just because they're not clear about these rules. And even looking at some of the documents or guidances from the Home Office, it's not very clear. But just to reassure those organizations who might consider taking on asylum seekers as volunteers, it is allowed, and I would encourage them to do so.
Perfect.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah, I guess before we round off, I don't know, Barbara, if you've got anything else you'd like to share beforehand, but yeah, feel free.
I've been doing all the talking.
You've got all the insight and knowledge.
So I'll tell you what I'm going to do is close off. I'm going to see Philippa, we're just about to close off. I'm not sure if you want to say anything before we close off. I don't think so. So I'm going to kindly remove, if I know what I'll do.